She vanished 8 months ago, taking his heart and a secret he never knew existed. When Kwon Jae-hyun collides with a heavily pregnant woman on a cold New York street, recognition hits like lightning. Melody, the wife who disappeared. The woman he was told betrayed him. But the timeline doesn't match the lies he was fed, and the child she's carrying changes everything. This is a story about the truths that destroy us, the lies that bind us, and the love that refuses to die even when it should. Hello, fam. Welcome back to Afro-Korean Heartbeat Stories. If you're ready for an emotional mafia romance that will wreck you in the best way, hit subscribe and let's begin. Don't forget to leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Thank you for your immense support. The collision happened so fast Melody didn't have time to turn away. One moment she was rushing down the Brooklyn sidewalk, her hand pressed against her swollen belly, her worn coat doing little against the November wind. The next, she'd slammed into something solid, warm, and achingly familiar. Her bag dropped, spilling receipts and loose change across the wet pavement. "I'm sorry, I wasn't looking," she started, already bending to gather her things despite the awkward weight of being 8 months pregnant making every movement difficult. Then she saw the shoes. Expensive Italian leather, the kind that cost more than 3 months of her rent. Her gaze traveled upward slowly, taking in the perfectly tailored charcoal suit, the black cashmere coat, the strong hands that had steadied her when she stumbled. She knew before she reached his face. Some part of her had known the instant their bodies collided, recognized him on a cellular level that bypassed logic and reason. Kwon Jae-hyun stood frozen on the sidewalk, his dark eyes wide with shock, his usually composed features cracked open with something that looked like devastation. 8 months had sharpened him somehow, carved away any softness that might have remained. His black hair was longer than she remembered, swept back from his face, and there were new lines around his eyes, around his mouth. He looked older, harder, more like the man she'd fled from and less like the boy she'd fallen in love with. Melody. Her name came out rough, barely more than a whisper. His Korean accent wrapped around the syllables the way it always had, turning her American name into something exotic and strange. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. For 8 months, she'd lived in terror of this exact moment, had planned and replanned what she would do if he found her. But all her preparations evaporated under the weight of his stare. His gaze dropped from her face, traveling down to where her coat gaped open, to where her hand still rested protectively over the swell of her abdomen. She watched the realization hit him, watched his expression shift from shock to confusion to something she couldn't quite name. "No," she whispered, finally finding her voice. "No, Jae-hyun, I have to go." She bent quickly, ignoring the way her back protested, scooping up what she could reach of her scattered belongings. Her hands shook so badly she could barely grip anything. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if sensing her panic. "Wait." Jae-hyun's hand shot out, not grabbing her but hovering near her elbow. "Please. Just wait. I can't. I'm late for work." The lie came automatically. She'd already finished her shift at the coffee shop, was supposed to be heading home to her tiny studio apartment in Bed-Stuy. But she couldn't tell him that. Couldn't give him any information he could use to find her again. "How far along are you?" The question was quiet, almost clinical, but she heard the tremor underneath it. "That's none of your business." "Melody, please. Just tell me. How far along?" She made the mistake of looking up at him then. His face had gone pale beneath his naturally tan Korean complexion, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run. But there was something else there too, something that looked almost like hope and that terrified her more than anything. 8 months, she heard herself say. She watched him calculate, saw the exact moment the math clicked into place. His jaw clenched, a muscle jumping in his cheek. His hands curled into fists at his sides. 8 months pregnant. She'd left 8 months ago, which meant she'd gotten pregnant right before leaving. Is it mine? The question hung in the freezing air between them. A taxi honked somewhere behind her. A group of laughing college students pushed past them on the narrow sidewalk. The city moved around them like they were stones in a river, but Melody couldn't look away from Jaehyun's face. No, she said firmly. The lie tasted like ash on her tongue. No, it's not yours. I'm with someone else now. His name is David. We're very happy. Something flickered across Jaehyun's face, too quick for her to read. Pain, maybe. Or disbelief. He took a half step back, his hands dropping to his sides. You moved on quickly. His voice had gone cold, flat. The warmth that had briefly lit his features when he first recognized her had vanished completely, replaced by the mask she remembered all too well. You left 8 months ago and you're 8 months pregnant. That means you got pregnant within days of leaving me. Or, his eyes narrowed as he recalculated. She could see the wheels turning in his mind. Or you were already pregnant when you left, he said slowly. You were pregnant with my child and you ran anyway. No, I told you it's not. Don't lie to me, Melody. I can see it in your eyes. You were pregnant when you walked out. How far along were you? A week? 2 weeks? Did you even know? She said nothing. Let him believe what he wanted. But her silence was answer enough. My God, he breathed. You knew. You knew you were carrying my child, and you still left. You let me spend 8 months thinking you'd betrayed me, moved on, found someone else. When all along you were pregnant with my baby. I had my reasons. What reasons could possibly justify this? What could I have done that was so terrible you had to take my child and disappear? I can't do this. Not here. Not now. She gathered the last of her things and straightened, one hand pressed against her lower back. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and she couldn't quite suppress the wince. Are you all right? Jaehyun asked, concern breaking through his anger. I'm fine. Goodbye, Jaehyun. She walked past him, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might faint. She made it 3 steps before his voice stopped her. Melody. She didn't turn around. If she turned around, if she saw his face again, she might break. She might tell him everything. And the truth would destroy what little piece she'd managed to build. I will find out why you left. I will find out what happened. And when I do, we're going to have a very long conversation about our child. His voice was quiet, but carried the weight of a promise. You can run again if you want, but I'll find you. And this time, I'm not letting you go without answers. Then she heard his footsteps moving in the opposite direction, the tap of expensive leather against wet concrete growing fainter. She stood frozen on the sidewalk until she couldn't hear them anymore, until she was sure he was really gone. Only then did she let out the breath she'd been holding. Only then did she let the tears come. 8 months. She'd stayed hidden for 8 months. And in less than 5 minutes, everything had fallen apart. She walked the 8 blocks to her apartment in a daze, barely registering the cold or the people or the traffic. Her mind kept replaying the moment of recognition, the shock in his eyes, the way his gaze had fixed on her pregnant belly like he was solving an equation. He'd figured it out. He knew the baby was his. And now he would come looking for answers. Her apartment building was a 4-story walk-up with a temperamental heating system and neighbors who fought loudly at 2 in the morning. She'd been here for 6 months, the longest she'd stayed anywhere since leaving. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she saved enough for something better, but the pregnancy had complicated everything. She climbed the stairs slowly, her hand on the railing, pausing on each landing to catch her breath. By the time she reached the third floor, her back was screaming and the baby was doing gymnastics against her ribs. She fumbled with her keys, finally getting the door open, and stumbled inside. The studio was small but clean, barely 400 square feet that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen all at once. She'd tried to make it cozy with secondhand furniture and cheap prints on the walls, but it still felt temporary, like a place you stayed while waiting for your real life to begin. Melody dropped her bag on the kitchen counter and collapsed onto her bed, not bothering to take off her coat. Her whole body ached. She'd been on her feet for 8 hours at the coffee shop, and the collision with Jae-hyun had drained what little energy she had left. She pressed both hands against her belly, feeling the baby move beneath her palms. A boy. She'd found out at the 20-week ultrasound. She'd been alone in that sterile room, watching the grainy black and white image on the screen, and when the technician had asked if she wanted to know the sex, she'd said yes without thinking. A boy. Jae-hyun's son. The child she'd been carrying when she walked out of their penthouse apartment on a cold March morning, leaving behind everything except the clothes on her back and the secret growing inside her. She'd been barely a week along when she left. So early that most women wouldn't have known yet. But she'd known. She'd taken 3 pregnancy tests, watched the positive lines appear, and felt her world shift. She'd been planning to tell Jae-hyun. Had been working up the courage, thinking maybe a baby would change things, would soften him, would make him see that his overprotective control was suffocating her. Then she'd overheard the conversation that changed everything. She'd been coming back from buying more pregnancy tests, wanting to confirm what she already knew. She'd let herself into the penthouse quietly and heard Jae-hyun's voice from his office. The door was cracked open, and she'd frozen in the hallway, listening. "I don't care what she wants," Jae-hyun had said, his voice cold and hard. "She doesn't leave this apartment without security. She doesn't see friends without me vetting them first. She doesn't make any major decisions without consulting me. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." But respectfully, Mrs. Kwon is becoming increasingly unhappy with the restrictions. "My wife's happiness is my concern, not yours. Your job is to ensure her safety. If she tries to leave without permission, you stop her. If she argues, you call me immediately. She seems to think she has freedom, but she needs to understand that her freedom ended the day she married me. This is for her own good." Melody had stood in that hallway, one hand pressed against her still flat stomach where a life had just begun, and realized she couldn't stay. Not just for herself, but for the baby growing inside her. She couldn't raise a child in a cage, couldn't let Jae-hyun's need for control extend to their son or daughter. So she'd waited until he left for a business meeting, had packed nothing but her wallet and phone, and had walked out. She'd been running ever since. Sleep came fitfully that night. She woke at 3 in the morning from a dream where Jae-hyun was standing in her apartment, his face expressionless, telling her she belonged to him, and so did the baby. She woke again at 5 from contractions that turned out to be Braxton Hicks. By the time her alarm went off at 7, she felt like she'd been hit by a truck. She dragged herself to the coffee shop, arriving 15 minutes late for her morning shift. Her manager, Teresa, took one look at her and frowned. "You look terrible. Are you feeling all right?" "Just tired." "I'm fine." "Melody, you're about to pop. Maybe you should take some time off before the baby comes." "I need the money." "I'll be fine." But she wasn't fine. By lunch rush, she was dizzy and nauseous, her back aching so badly she could barely stand. She dropped a tray of dishes, and Teresa sent her to the back room to sit down. "That's it," Teresa said firmly. "You're going home. And you're not coming back until after you have that baby." I'll still pay you for your scheduled shifts this week, but you need to rest. Teresa, I can't afford. I don't care what you can afford. You're going to hurt yourself or the baby. Go home. That's an order. So she went home, too exhausted to argue. She bought groceries on the way, cheap staples that would stretch through the week, and climbed the 3 flights of stairs back to her apartment. An envelope was taped to her door. She knew what it was before she opened it. Eviction notice. 30 days to vacate the premises due to unpaid rent. Melody stared at the paper in her hands, the words blurring together. She was 3 months behind on rent. She'd been trying to catch up, had been putting every spare dollar toward the debt, but the medical bills from her prenatal care had eaten through her savings. And now she had 30 days to find somewhere else to live while 8 months pregnant and working minimum wage. Except she wasn't working anymore. Teresa had sent her home with pay for 1 week, but after that, nothing. She had maybe $600 to her name and a baby due in 4 weeks. She unlocked her door and went inside, the eviction notice still clutched in her hand. She sat on her bed and let the reality crash over her. She had no money, no job, no family to turn to. Her mother had died 5 years ago, her father was long gone, and she had no siblings. She'd been so careful, so determined to make it on her own, to prove that she could survive without Jaehyun's money and control. But survival and actually living were 2 different things, and right now she was barely managing the first. She thought about calling him. The thought crept in like poison, tempting and terrible. 1 phone call and all her problems would disappear. Jaehyun would pay her rent, cover her medical bills, make sure she had everything she needed. All she'd have to do was give up her freedom and go back to being his beautiful, controlled wife. No, she'd rather live in a shelter than go back to that cage. She spent the rest of the day looking at apartment listings online, growing more desperate as she realized there was literally nowhere she could afford. Every listing required first month, last month, and security deposit, a sum that might as well have been $1 million for all her ability to come up with it. That night, she lay in bed and felt the baby kick, and she cried. Silent tears that slid down her face and into her pillow. She'd thought she was strong enough to do this alone. She'd been wrong. The next 3 days were a blur of exhaustion and panic. She tried to rest like Teresa had ordered, but rest was impossible when her mind wouldn't stop spinning through worst-case scenarios. On the 4th day, she forced herself to go back to the coffee shop to pick up her paycheck. Teresa took one look at her and insisted on driving her home. "Have you been sleeping?" Teresa asked as they sat in her car outside Melody's building. "Not really. And eating, when I remember." "Melody, honey, you can't do this to yourself. You need to take care of you and that baby. Do you have anyone who can help you?" "What about the baby's father?" "He doesn't know. Maybe it's time to tell him. Pride isn't worth your health." "It's not about pride. It's about survival. If I tell him, I'll lose everything." Teresa didn't understand, but she didn't push. She made Melody promise to call if she needed anything, then watched her climb the stairs to make sure she got inside safely. That night, Melody woke at 2 in the morning to pain so intense she couldn't breathe. Sharp, stabbing pain in her abdomen that made her curl into a ball and gasp. Not contractions. Something else. Something wrong. She managed to grab her phone and call 911, barely able to speak through the pain. The dispatcher kept her on the line, asking questions, promising help was coming. Melody heard sirens in the distance, growing closer, and prayed the baby would be okay. The paramedics arrived and helped her down the 3 flights of stairs. The pain had eased slightly, but her vision was swimming and she felt like she might pass out. They loaded her into the ambulance and one of them started taking her vitals while the other drove. Blood pressure is 170 over 110, the paramedic said. Possible preeclampsia. How far along are you? 34 weeks. Any bleeding? No, just pain. They rushed her into Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, straight to labor and delivery. Nurses swarmed around her, hooking her up to monitors, checking the baby's heartbeat, taking blood. A doctor came in, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and gentle hands. I'm Dr. Chin. You're showing signs of severe preeclampsia. Your blood pressure is dangerously high and you have protein in your urine. We need to get it under control, but if we can't, we may need to deliver the baby tonight. It's too early. 34 weeks is early, but babies born at 34 weeks do very well with proper care. Right now, my concern is keeping both of you alive. Do you understand? Melody nodded, too scared to speak. They gave her medication to lower her blood pressure and magnesium to prevent seizures. The pain gradually eased, but she felt strange, disconnected from her body. They kept her overnight for observation, and by morning her blood pressure had stabilized enough that Dr. Chin agreed to hold off on delivery. But you're on bed rest from now until delivery, Dr. Chin said firmly. Complete bed rest. No work, no stairs if you can avoid them, minimal physical activity. Someone needs to be checking on you regularly. Do you have anyone who can help you? I'll figure something out. This isn't optional, Melody. If your blood pressure spikes again, we'll have no choice but to deliver. And next time, we might not catch it in time. Do you have family? Friends? The baby's father. No family. My boss checks on me. That'll be enough. Dr. Chin looked skeptical, but signed her discharge papers. Teresa came to pick her up, took one look at the discharge instructions, and shook her head. You can't go back to that apartment. 3 flights of stairs? No way. You're coming to stay with me. Teresa, I can't impose. You're not imposing. I've got a spare room and I work from home half the week. I can keep an eye on you. Don't argue. So Melody found herself installed in Teresa's spare bedroom in Queens, surrounded by kindness she didn't deserve. Teresa brought her meals, checked her blood pressure twice a day with a home monitor, and made sure she stayed horizontal as much as possible. But it couldn't last. On the 3rd day, Teresa got a call that her mother in Florida had fallen and broken her hip. She needed to fly out immediately. I'm so sorry, Teresa said, already packing. My sister is a mess and Mom needs someone there. I'll only be gone a few days, maybe a week. Will you be okay? I'll be fine. Go take care of your mom. Call someone if you need help. Promise me. I promise. Teresa left that evening. Melody lay in the quiet apartment, listening to the sounds of the city through the window, and felt the loneliness crash over her like a wave. She was alone again. Completely, utterly alone. That night, she had a dream. Not a nightmare this time, but a memory. She was back in the penthouse, newly married to Jae-hyun, sitting on their bed and watching him sleep. In the dream, she reached out and touched his face, and he'd opened his eyes and smiled at her. A real smile, soft and unguarded. I love you, Dream Jae-hyun had said. More than anything. I'll keep you safe. I promise. She woke crying, her hand pressed against her belly, missing something that had been real once, but had turned toxic. Because the real Jae-hyun had loved her, but his love had become a prison. She'd left before she could tell him about the baby, had run before she could see whether a child would have changed him or made him worse. The next morning, she woke to cramping. Not severe, just uncomfortable, but persistent. She tried to ignore it, tried to rest like the doctor ordered, but by afternoon the cramping had intensified. She checked and there was spotting. Not much, just a little, but enough to make her heart race. She called the hospital. They told her to come in immediately. She called Teresa's number, but it went straight to voicemail. She was probably on the plane. She called 911, but they said it wasn't an emergency. She should take a car service or taxi to the hospital. She had $18 in her wallet. Not enough for a taxi from Queens to Brooklyn. She could take the subway, but the thought of navigating stairs and crowded platforms while cramping and spotting terrified her. She sat on the edge of Teresa's guest bed, her phone in her hand, staring at the contact list. There was only one person who could help her. One person who would drop everything and come. One person who had the resources to get her to the hospital safely. She should call anyone else. Should call Teresa's neighbor or a car service and figure out the money later. Should do literally anything except what she was about to do. But the baby came first. Her pride, her fear, her need for independence, none of it mattered as much as making sure her son was safe. She scrolled through her contacts until she found it. The number she'd saved 8 months ago and sworn she'd never use. She stared at it for a long moment, her thumb hovering over the call button. Then she pressed it. He answered on the second ring. Melody. The surprise in his voice was evident. He'd probably checked the caller ID, probably couldn't believe she was actually calling him. I need help. Her voice cracked. I'm bleeding. The baby. Something might be wrong and I need to get to the hospital, but I don't have money for a taxi and I'm in Queens and... Where in Queens? Give me the address. She told him Teresa's address, the words tumbling out in a rush. Stay there. Don't move. I'm sending a car. It'll be there in 10 minutes. Jaehyun, don't. Just stay put and keep calm. The car is coming. He hung up. Melody sat clutching her phone, trembling. 9 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. She opened it to find a driver in a dark suit, professional and courteous. Mrs. Kwon? I'm here to take you to Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. She didn't correct the name, just grabbed her bag and let him help her down the stairs. The car was a black Mercedes, sleek and expensive. She slid into the back seat and the driver pulled smoothly into traffic. Mr. Kwon asked me to tell you he's meeting you at the hospital, the driver said. He's about 15 minutes behind us. He doesn't need to come. With respect, ma'am, I don't think anything could keep him away. They made it to the hospital in 20 minutes. The driver helped her inside and stayed with her until she was checked in and a nurse came to take her to labor and delivery. She was settled into a room, hooked up to monitors, when Jaehyun arrived. He looked like he'd run the whole way. His hair was disheveled, his tie loose, his face pale. He stopped in the doorway of her room, his chest heaving, his eyes scanning her from head to toe as if checking for visible injuries. Is she all right? He asked the nurse. Is the baby all right? We're monitoring her now. The doctor will be in shortly. Jaehyun moved into the room and stopped a few feet from her bed, like he was afraid to get closer. You called me. I didn't have anyone else. I don't care why you called. I'm just glad you did. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up even more. How bad is the pain? How much bleeding? Not much bleeding. Just spotting. The cramping is better now. Dr. Chin came in then, examined Melody, checked the monitors. Her expression was serious, but not panicked. Your blood pressure is elevated again, but not critical. The spotting appears to have stopped. The baby's heartbeat is strong. But Melody, you need to be more careful. Bed rest means bed rest. What were you doing before the cramping started? Nothing. Just lying down. And you're staying where? Not at your old apartment with the stairs. I'm at a friend's house. She had to leave town. I was alone. Dr. Chen's expression hardened. You can't be alone. Not with preeclampsia this severe. You need someone checking on you constantly. If your blood pressure spikes again or you start having symptoms, you need to be able to get help immediately. I'll figure something out. No, she won't. Jaehyun's voice cut through the room, firm and decisive. She's coming home with me. I have a penthouse with an elevator, full-time staff, and I work from home. She'll have round-the-clock care. Jaehyun, no. I can't. You can and you will. For the baby, if not for yourself. He looked at Dr. Chen. She'll be safe with me. I'll make sure she follows every restriction, attends every appointment, has everything she needs. Dr. Chen looked between them, clearly sensing the tension, but more concerned with her patient's health. Is this acceptable to you, Melody? She wanted to say no, wanted to refuse, to maintain her independence, to keep running. But the cramping had scared her. The spotting had terrified her. And she was so tired of fighting alone. Just until the baby comes, she heard herself say, "Then I'm leaving." Agreed, Jaehyun said immediately. Whatever you want. Just let me help you. Dr. Chin kept her overnight for observation. Jaehyun stayed in a chair beside her bed, refusing to leave even when she told him to go home and get rest. She woke several times during the night to find him still there, sometimes sleeping, but mostly just watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. In the morning, Dr. Chin discharged her with strict instructions and a warning that they might need to induce labor early if her condition worsened. Jaehyun had already arranged everything. A car waited outside to take them to his penthouse. His assistant had picked up her things from Teresa's apartment. The penthouse was exactly as she remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, minimalist furniture, expensive art on white walls. The guest room had been prepared for her, the bed made with soft white linens, fresh flowers on the nightstand. You don't have to stay in the guest room, Jaehyun said carefully. The master bedroom is yours if you want it. The guest room is fine. All right. I've hired a nurse to check on you during the day. She'll be here at 9 tomorrow morning. If you need anything at night, anything at all, my room is just down the hall. Don't hesitate. Thank you. He lingered in the doorway, like he wanted to say more. Finally, he spoke. I know you don't trust me. I know you have every reason not to. But I meant what I said at the hospital. You're safe here. Both of you. I won't try to keep you here after the baby is born. If you want to leave, you can leave. But for now, please, just rest and let me take care of you. She nodded, too tired to argue. He left, closing the door softly behind him. She lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The nurse arrived the next morning as promised. Her name was Patricia, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and efficient manner. She checked Melody's blood pressure, took her vitals, made sure she was eating properly. Your blood pressure is still high but stable, Patricia said. We'll keep monitoring it. Are you feeling all right? Any pain, dizziness, vision changes? No, just tired. That's normal. Rest as much as you can. Jaehyun kept his distance for the first few days. He worked from his home office, came out for meals, checked on her briefly in the evenings. He was polite, careful, never pushing for more than she was willing to give. It was so different from the man she'd left that she didn't know what to make of it. On the fourth day, she woke to voices outside her door. Jaehyun and someone else, speaking in rapid Korean. She caught enough to understand they were arguing about something, but not what. Then silence. A few minutes later, Jaehyun knocked on her door. Come in. He entered carrying a folder, his expression troubled. I need to talk to you about something. About why you left. Her heart started racing. I don't want to talk about that. I know, but I need you to hear this. Please. He sat in the chair near her bed, the folder resting on his lap. After you left, I was angry. Hurt. I couldn't understand why you'd just disappear without explanation. So I had people investigate. I thought maybe someone had threatened you, or you'd gotten into some kind of trouble. Jae-hyun, please, let me finish. He opened the folder. What they found was this. Documents showing that someone had been feeding you information designed to make you afraid of me. Edited recordings of conversations taken out of context. Fake incident reports about my business dealings. Someone wanted you to leave, and they manipulated you into doing it. Melody stared at him. What are you talking about? The conversation you overheard. The one about restricting your movements, about controlling your life. It was real, but it wasn't about you. It was about my mother. Your mother. She'd been diagnosed with early-stage dementia. She kept trying to leave her apartment alone and getting lost. I'd hired security to keep her safe, to make sure she didn't wander off or get hurt. That conversation you heard was me giving instructions about her care. Melody felt the room tilt. No, that doesn't make sense. He said Mrs. Kwon. He was talking about me. My mother is also Mrs. Kwon. And the conversation was deliberately played where you would overhear it by someone who wanted you to think I was trying to control you. Someone who had access to our apartment, who knew your schedule, who could manipulate situations to plan out. He pulled out papers from the folder. Someone who had every reason to want you gone. Who? My cousin, Yuna. She'd been in love with me since we were teenagers. When I married you, she saw you as an obstacle. So she started working on you slowly, feeding you doubts, making you afraid. When that didn't work fast enough, she staged that conversation for you to hear. Melody's hands were shaking. I don't believe you. I didn't want to believe it either. But I have proof. Phone records showing her calls to the household staff. Email records showing her asking about your schedule. Security footage showing her in our apartment on the days you accidentally overheard conversations. He held out the folder. It's all here. Everything. She took the folder with numb fingers and started reading. Phone records. Emails. Transcripts of the real conversation about his mother. Security footage timestamped and dated. It was all there, exactly like he said. Evidence of a manipulation so careful, so calculated, that she'd never suspected. I loved you, she whispered. I loved you so much. And I thought you were trying to turn me into a prisoner. I know. And I'm sorry I gave you reasons to believe it might be true. I was overprotective. I did restrict your movements sometimes, but only because my world is dangerous and I was terrified of losing you. I never wanted to control you, Melody. I just wanted to keep you safe. So Yuna made me think. She made you think I was a monster. And when you found out you were pregnant, you ran because you didn't want to raise a child in what you thought was a cage. He leaned forward. But I never knew, Melody. You were pregnant when you left, and I never knew. If I'd known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you, to explain, to fix things. I found out just a few days before I left. I was going to tell you. I was so happy, so scared, so hopeful. And then I heard that conversation, and I thought if you were trying to control me, what would you do to our child? So I ran. And you've been alone this whole time. Yes. Suffering alone. Struggling alone. Carrying my child alone because someone lied to you, and I was too blind to see it. His voice cracked. God, Melody. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it. She started crying then, all the fear and pain and loneliness of the past 8 months pouring out. Jae-hyun moved to sit on the edge of her bed and pulled her gently into his arms. She should have pushed him away, should have maintained her distance. But she was so tired and he was so warm, and for the first time in 8 months, she wasn't alone. What happened to Yuna? She asked when she could speak again. She's gone. Out of our lives permanently. She won't bother us again. You didn't. I didn't kill her, if that's what you're asking. But I made it very clear that if she ever comes near you or our son again, that will change. His hand moved to her belly, tentative. May I? She nodded. He pressed his palm against her, and almost immediately the baby kicked. Jaehyun's eyes went wide. He's strong. He takes after his father. They sat like that for a long time, his hand on her belly, her head on his shoulder, feeling their son move. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. The hurt was too deep, the misunderstanding too profound. But it was a start. I want to be there, Jaehyun said quietly. When he's born. I want to be in the room, to see him take his first breath. Will you let me? Yes. I want you there. And after? When you're healed and ready to leave. She pulled back to look at him. I don't know yet. We have a lot to work through. A lot of trust to rebuild. But maybe we don't have to figure it all out right now. Maybe we can just take it one day at a time. I can do that. One day at a time. His hand was still on her belly, his expression soft in a way she hadn't seen in so long. Does he have a name? I've been thinking about it. I wanted to wait until you could have input. If you want to. I want to. What were you considering? Something Korean. Something that means strength or courage. He's going to need both of those things. Miho, Jaehyun said immediately. It means brave and heroic. And it was my grandfather's name. He was the strongest man I ever knew. Miho. She tested the name, feeling how it fit. I like it. Miho Kwon. Perfect. His voice was thick with emotion. Our son. Miho. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange sort of peace. Melody rested, her blood pressure gradually stabilizing. Patricia came daily to check her vitals. Jaehyun worked from home, always available if she needed anything. They ate meals together, talked carefully about neutral topics, slowly learning how to be around each other again. He told her about his work, the legitimate business ventures and the less legitimate ones. He didn't hide anything, didn't try to make himself look better than he was. He dealt in information, in protection, in services that existed in gray areas. He had power and money and connections that reached into every corner of New York's underworld. I know what I am, he said one evening over dinner. I'm not a good man by most people's standards. But everything I do with purpose. I protect people who can't protect themselves. I punish people who deserve punishment. I exist in the spaces where the law can't or won't reach. Does that include what you did to Yuna? Yes. The law wouldn't have touched her for what she did. Emotional manipulation isn't illegal. But what she did to us, to our family, deserved consequences. So I gave her a choice. Disappear and start over somewhere far from here, or face me. She chose to disappear. With money. Enough to survive, not enough to be comfortable. She'll have to work for the first time in her entitled life. Consider it character building. Melody should have been disturbed by the cold calculation in his voice. Instead, she felt a savage satisfaction. Yuna had destroyed their marriage, had separated a father from his unborn child, had caused 8 months of suffering. Whatever Jaehyun had done to her, she'd earned it. Thank you, she said quietly, for dealing with her, for believing me, for everything. You don't have to thank me. This is what family does. Family. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. They weren't just 2 people anymore. They were about to become 3. Whether they stayed together or separated after the baby was born, they would always be connected by their son. On a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after moving into the penthouse, Melody woke to wetness between her legs. Not spotting this time. Her water had broken. She felt the first contraction hit, a tight band of pressure wrapping around her belly, and knew it was time. Jaehyun. She called out, trying to keep her voice calm. Jaehyun, it's happening. He burst into her room 30 seconds later, barefoot and shirtless, his hair sticking up like he'd been sleeping. The baby? My water broke. We need to go to the hospital. He transformed instantly from sleepy to focused. He grabbed his phone, made calls while helping her stand. A car was already waiting downstairs by the time they made it to the elevator. Jaehyun had a bag packed for her, had been ready for this moment for weeks. The drive to Brooklyn Methodist took 20 minutes. Contractions were coming every 7 minutes, manageable but intensifying. Jaehyun held her hand in the back seat, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm, his voice steady and calm. You're doing great. Just breathe through them. We're almost there. They rushed her into labor and delivery. Dr. Chin was already there, calm and professional. They checked her, and she was 4 centimeters dilated, moving quickly for a first baby. Looks like Miho is ready to meet his parents, Dr. Chin said with a smile. How are you feeling about pain management? Epidural, Melody said immediately. Definitely epidural. The anesthesiologist came, placed the epidural, and the pain faded to manageable pressure. Jaehyun never left her side. He held her hand, wiped her forehead, whispered encouragement in both English and Korean. When she was fully dilated and it was time to push, he moved to support her back, his arms around her, lending her his strength. You can do this, he murmured in her ear. You're the strongest person I know. You survived 8 months alone with our child. You built a life from nothing. You can do anything. She pushed, and pushed, and pushed. The pain was incredible even with the epidural, a pressure so intense she thought she might break. But Jaehyun's arms were around her and Dr. Chin was coaching her, and somewhere in the midst of it all, she heard a sound. Crying. High and angry and absolutely perfect. It's a boy, Dr. Chin announced unnecessarily, holding up a tiny, furious, absolutely beautiful baby. Congratulations. They placed him on Melody's chest, this tiny person she'd carried for 8 months, and she felt her heart crack open. He was so small, barely 5 pounds, with a shock of black hair and tiny fists waving in the air. His eyes were squeezed shut, his mouth open in outrage at being forced into the cold world. Hi, baby, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Hi, Miho. I'm your mom. And I'm your dad, Jaehyun added, his voice breaking. He was crying too, silent tears sliding down his cheeks as he stared at their son. We're your parents, and we love you so much. Miho stopped crying at the sound of their voices. His tiny face scrunched up, his eyes trying to open. Melody looked up at Jaehyun and found him staring at her with an expression of such profound love and wonder that it took her breath away. We made him, Jaehyun said softly. We made this perfect person. We did. They let her hold Miho for a few minutes before taking him to be weighed and measured. 5 pounds, 2 ounces. 18 inches long. Perfectly healthy despite being a few weeks early. The nurses cleaned him up, wrapped him in a blue blanket, and brought him back. Who wants to hold him first? The nurse asked. Jaehyun, Melody said. Let his father hold him. The nurse placed Miho in Jaehyun's arms, and he went completely still, like he was afraid to move and break the spell. He stared down at his son with an expression of absolute awe. Hello, Miho. I'm your appa. He looked up at Melody, his eyes still wet. Thank you. Thank you for him. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for calling me. Thank you for letting me be here. Where else would you be? He's your son. I know. But after everything I did, everything I failed to do, you would have been justified in keeping him from me. But you didn't. Even after 8 months apart, even after all the pain, you let me be here for this. That's a gift I'll never deserve. They moved her to a recovery room a few hours later. Miho was in the nursery being monitored since he was a few weeks early, but he was doing well. Jaehyun had pulled strings to get Melody a private room with a couch that converted to a bed. He'd already announced his intention to stay. "You should go home," Melody said as evening approached. "Get some real sleep. I'm not leaving. Not tonight. Not while you're here. Jaehyun, please, let me stay. I'll sleep on the couch. I won't bother you. But I need to be here. I need to know you're both safe." She was too tired to argue. She fell asleep within minutes, exhausted from labor, and when she woke in the middle of the night, Jaehyun was sitting in the chair next to her bed, wide awake, watching her sleep. "You're supposed to be resting," she murmured. "I will. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm okay. The baby's okay. Everything is okay. I know. I just needed to see it for myself." He reached out and took her hand. "Melody, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said 8 months ago. Something I should have said every day we were together." "What?" "I love you. I've loved you since the day we met. I loved you when we got married. I loved you when you left, even though I didn't understand why. I loved you every day you were gone. And I love you now even more than before, because now I understand what I almost lost." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm not asking you to stay. I'm just telling you that you're loved. You and Miho. You're both loved completely and unconditionally." Melody felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought you were trying to control me, even when I was running, even when I was so angry I could barely breathe. I never stopped. I just didn't know if love was enough. Is it? Enough? I don't know yet. But I want to find out. Not right now. I'm not ready to make decisions right now. But maybe in a few weeks, when I'm healed and we've had time to figure out how to be parents, maybe then we can talk about what comes next. I can wait. I'll wait as long as you need." They brought Miho back at 6 in the morning for feeding. Melody tried to breastfeed, but he was small and sleepy and had trouble latching. The lactation consultant helped, patient and kind, and eventually Miho figured it out. Watching him nurse, his tiny hand wrapped around her finger, Melody felt a surge of fierce, protective love so intense it hurt. "He's perfect," Jaehyun said softly, watching from his chair. "Absolutely perfect. He is. We did good. You did good. I just contributed genetic material. You grew him, carried him, kept him safe when I didn't even know he existed. And now we keep him safe together." They kept them in the hospital for 3 days since Miho was early and they wanted to monitor him. He gained weight, passed all his tests, and proved he could regulate his temperature and breathing on his own. On the morning of discharge, Jaehyun arrived with a car seat already installed in the Mercedes and an outfit for Miho to wear home. "I didn't know what to get," he admitted. "So I bought 6 different outfits and let the nurses pick." Melody laughed, the sound feeling strange and wonderful. When was the last time she'd laughed? Months ago, maybe longer. But looking at Jaehyun holding up tiny onesies with serious concentration on his face, she couldn't help it. They dressed Miho in soft blue cotton covered in little clouds. He looked impossibly tiny in the car seat. The drive back to the penthouse was nerve-wracking, every bump and turn making Melody's heart race. But they made it safely, and Jaehyun carried the car seat up like it contained the most precious cargo in the world, which it did. The penthouse had been transformed. The guest room where Melody had been staying now contained a crib, a changing table, a rocking chair, shelves full of baby supplies. Everything soft and neutral and perfect. "When did you do all this?" Melody asked, staring around the nursery. "While you were in the hospital. I wanted it ready for when you came home." He set the car seat down gently. "I hope it's okay. If you don't like anything, we can change it. It's perfect. It's all perfect." Those first few days were a blur of feeding and diaper changes and exhaustion. Miho ate every 2 hours, which meant no one slept for more than 90 minutes at a time. Melody was sore and tired and overwhelmed. But she wasn't alone. Jaehyun was there for every feeding, changing diapers, rocking Miho when he cried, learning how to be a father. One night, about a week after coming home, Melody woke at 3 in the morning to silence. Panic flooded her. Why wasn't Miho crying? Was he breathing? Was he okay? She threw off her covers and rushed to the nursery. She found Jaehyun sitting in the rocking chair, shirtless, Miho asleep on his bare chest. He was singing softly in Korean, a lullaby she vaguely recognized. His hand covered most of Miho's tiny back, rising and falling with each breath. He was fussing, Jaehyun whispered when he noticed her in the doorway. I didn't want him to wake you. The skin-to-skin seems to help him settle. Melody's heart melted. This man, this dangerous man who ran an empire from the shadows, who inspired fear in his enemies and commanded respect from everyone, was sitting in a rocking chair at 3 in the morning singing lullabies to their son. And he looked happier than she'd ever seen him. You're going to be a good father, she said softly. I'm going to try. He deserves the best. You both do. She went back to bed, but couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about choices and second chances. Thinking about the life she'd built alone versus the life they could build together. Thinking about Miho and what he deserved. A few days later, Patricia came for a postpartum checkup. She examined Melody, checked her incision, asked about her emotional state. How are you feeling mentally? Any signs of postpartum depression or anxiety? I'm tired. Overwhelmed sometimes. But I think that's normal. It is. But I want you to know the signs to watch for. If you start feeling hopeless, or like you can't bond with the baby, or have thoughts of hurting yourself or him, you call me immediately. Understood. Understood. And your living situation? You have support? You're not trying to do this alone. I have support. Miho's father is here. He's been amazing, actually. Good. That makes a huge difference. Patricia packed up her equipment. You're healing well physically. Your blood pressure is back to normal. Just keep resting when you can and don't try to do too much too soon. After Patricia left, Melody found Jaehyun in the nursery, standing over Miho's crib and watching him sleep with that expression of wonder that still hadn't faded. We need to talk, she said quietly. He tensed, and she realized he thought she was about to tell him she was leaving. Okay, let's go to the living room. They settled on the couch, maintaining careful distance between them. Jaehyun's hands were clasped tightly together, his jaw set, bracing himself for bad news. I've been thinking, Melody started, about what comes next, about what I want. And I don't want to leave. Not yet. Not until we've really tried to fix what broke between us. She took a breath. I want to go to counseling. Both of us. Together and separately. I want us to learn how to communicate better, how to trust each other again. I want to understand why you were so overprotective, and I want you to understand why that terrified me. I want to build something new instead of trying to go back to what we had before. Hope flickered across his face. You want to try again? Really try. I want to try. Not for Miho, though he's part of it. But for us. Because despite everything, despite all the pain and misunderstanding, I still love you. And I think you still love me. And maybe that's enough to build on. It's more than enough. It's everything. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. I'll do whatever you need. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I'll be completely honest, even when it's hard. I'll respect your boundaries, even when my instinct is to protect you by controlling the situation. I'll be the partner you deserve. And I'll try to communicate better instead of running when things get hard. I'll try to trust you, even when it's scary. I'll give you the chance to prove you've changed. Thank you. His voice broke. Thank you for this chance. I won't waste it. They found a therapist who specialized in couples counseling, a woman named Dr. Sarah Kim who understood the dynamics of their relationship without judgment. The first session was hard. They talked about the conversation Melody had overheard, about Yuna's manipulation, about Jaehyun's need for control and Melody's need for freedom. You both have valid fears, Dr. Kim said. Jaehyun, your world is dangerous. Your need to protect Melody isn't irrational. But Melody, being protected shouldn't mean being imprisoned. The question is whether you two can find a middle ground where you both feel safe. It took time. Weeks of sessions, of hard conversations, of learning how to fight fair and communicate clearly. Jaehyun worked on loosening his grip, on asking instead of demanding, on trusting Melody to make her own choices. Melody worked on not running at the first sign of conflict, on speaking up before resentment built, on trusting that Jaehyun's protection came from love and not a desire to control. Miho grew. 1 month old, then 2, then 3. He started smiling, started following them with his eyes, started grasping toys. Watching Jaehyun with their son was Melody's favorite thing. He was patient and gentle, singing Korean lullabies and talking to Miho in both languages, determined their son would grow up bilingual. 3 months after Miho's birth, Melody woke one morning to find Jaehyun already up, standing by the nursery window with Miho in his arms, the morning sun painting them both gold. "What are you thinking about?" she asked from the doorway. "How lucky I am. How close I came to losing this." He turned to look at her. "If you hadn't called me that day, if you'd been too proud or too scared, I might never have known about him. I might have lost you both. But you didn't. We're here. We're trying. We're doing more than trying. We're succeeding." He walked over and kissed her forehead, careful not to jostle Miho. "I know we're taking things slow. I know we're still rebuilding trust. But I need you to know something. This, right here, you and me and our son. This is what power really looks like. Not money or fear or control. This. Family. Love. That's the only power that matters." Melody felt tears prick her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "When I almost lost everything that mattered and had to figure out what was worth fighting for." He looked down at Miho, who was dozing peacefully in his arms. "I used to think strength meant never showing weakness. Never backing down. Always being in control. But real strength is admitting when you're wrong. Asking for help. Changing when you need to change. You taught me that. We taught each other." For months after Miho's birth, Teresa came to visit. She'd been away dealing with her mother's recovery, had stayed in Florida longer than expected, and was finally back in New York. She arrived at the penthouse with gifts for Miho and eyes full of questions. "So," she said after cooing over the baby, "you and the mysterious father worked things out? We're working on it. It's complicated. Honey, anything worth having is complicated. But you look happy. Happier than I've ever seen you. That's what matters." "I am happy. Scared sometimes, but happy. Good. You deserve happy." Teresa looked around the penthouse, taking in the obvious wealth. "He treats you right? Respects you. He does. He made mistakes, bad ones, but he's trying to fix them. We both are. Then I'm glad. You and that baby deserve the best." 6 months after Miho's birth, on a cold September evening, Jaehyun asked Melody to have dinner with him. Not in the penthouse, but out. His mother, fully recovered from her dementia scare after finding the right treatment, had agreed to watch Miho for a few hours. Melody dressed carefully, choosing a simple black dress that fit her post-baby body. Jaehyun wore a suit, and when he saw her, his face lit up. "You're beautiful," he said simply. "You're not so bad yourself." He took her to a small Korean restaurant in Queens, the kind of place with no signs in English and grandmothers cooking in the back. They ordered too much food, fed each other bites of their favorites, and talked about everything and nothing. "I have something for you," Jaehyun said when the meal was winding down. He pulled a small box from his pocket and set it on the table between them. Melody's heart started racing. "Jaehyun, it's not what you think. Open it." She opened the box. Inside was a key. "It's a key to the penthouse," he explained. "You've been staying with me for 6 months, but you don't have your own key. You've always had to ask me to let you in, had to depend on me to come and go. I don't want that anymore. This is your home too, if you want it to be. But even if you decide to leave, even if you get your own place, I want you to have this key. So you always know you have somewhere safe to go. So you never have to ask permission to come home." She stared at the key, this tiny piece of metal that represented everything they'd been working toward. Trust. Freedom. Partnership instead of possession. "Thank you," she whispered. "There's something else." He took a breath. "I know we said we'd take things slow. I know we're still in counseling, still figuring things out. But Melody, I need you to know my intentions. When you're ready, not now but someday, I want to marry you again. I want to stand in front of our family and friends and vow to love and respect you, to be your partner and not your keeper. I want to choose you every day, and I want you to choose me back. But only when you're ready. Only when you trust me completely. I can wait as long as it takes. Melody felt tears sliding down her cheeks. What if I'm ready now? His eyes went wide. Now, not to get married tomorrow, but to move forward. To stop living in the guest room and start sharing your bed again. To introduce you to my friends as my husband and not just Miho's father. To really try this marriage instead of just testing it. She reached across the table and took his hand. I love you, Jaehyun. I forgive you for the mistakes you made. And I think you've forgiven me for running instead of fighting. So maybe it's time to stop being scared and start being brave. You're sure? I'm sure. We'll still do counseling. We'll still work on communication. But yes, I'm sure. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this family we're building. He came around the table, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her. Not tentatively like the careful kisses they'd shared over the past months, but deeply, passionately, like he'd been holding back and finally had permission to let go. She kissed him back with equal fervor, pouring 6 months of healing and hope into it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this choice. Good, because I'm going to hold you to that. They picked up Miho from his grandmother's house. She took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly. You worked things out, she said in Korean. We're working on it, Jaehyun replied. Every day. That's all any of us can do. Work on it every day. Love each other every day. Choose each other every day. She handed Miho to Melody with a smile. This little one is lucky to have parents who fight for their love instead of giving up. That night, after Miho was asleep in his crib, Melody moved her things from the guest room to the master bedroom. It felt momentous and ordinary all at once. Just clothes in a closet, toiletries in a bathroom, but also a choice made and honored. She climbed into bed beside Jaehyun for the first time in almost 9 months. He pulled her close, her back to his chest, his arm wrapped around her waist. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. For coming home. Thank you for giving me a home worth coming back to. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when Miho woke crying at 2 in the morning, they both got up. Melody fed him while Jaehyun changed his diaper, then they put him back to bed together, a team. This was what happy looked like, Melody thought as she climbed back into bed. Not perfect. Not without scars or struggles. But real. Honest. Built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine love instead of control and fear. 6 months later, on a crisp March evening exactly 1 year after Melody had left, they renewed their vows. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, held in the penthouse with views of the city lights. Miho, almost a year old and taking his first wobbly steps, served as ring bearer with help from his grandmother. Melody wore white. Jaehyun wore a traditional black suit. And when they said their vows, they meant every word. I promise to love you without caging you, Jaehyun said, his voice steady and sure. To protect you without controlling you. To be your partner in all things, the good and the bad. To listen when you speak, to trust your choices, to respect your freedom even when it scares me. I promise to choose you every day, not because I have to, but because I want to. Because you're the best thing that ever happened to me. I promise to love you without running, Melody said, her own voice strong despite the tears streaming down her face. To stay and fight when things get hard. To trust you even when it's difficult. To speak my truth instead of letting resentment build. I promise to choose you every day, not because I'm trapped, but because I'm free. Free to leave and choosing to stay. Free to love you completely and without fear. They sealed the promises with a kiss. Their friends applauded. Miho clapped his chubby hands together and laughed. And Melody felt, for the first time in years, completely at peace. This was love. Not the desperate, clinging kind she'd feared. Not the controlling kind Jaehyun had mistakenly shown before. But the real kind. The kind that set you free and trusted you to come back. The kind that acknowledged mistakes and worked to fix them. The kind that built something new from the ashes of what broke. Later that night, after the guests had left and Miho was asleep, they stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't run into each other that night? Melody asked. Every day. And every day I'm grateful we did. Grateful you were brave enough to call me when you needed help. Grateful you gave me a second chance. Do you think Miho will understand someday? When he's older and asks about our story? I think we'll tell him the truth. That his parents loved each other, but almost destroyed that love through misunderstanding and fear. That they found their way back through hard work and forgiveness. That love isn't easy or simple, but it's worth fighting for. Jae-hyun pulled her closer. And I think we'll tell him that he was never unwanted or unloved, not for a single second. That even when his parents were apart, even before I knew he existed, he was loved. That's a good story. It's our story. And we're still writing it. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the city lights twinkle below. Somewhere down there, people were falling in love and falling apart, making mistakes and fixing them, running away and coming home. Just like they had. But tonight, they were together. A family. Imperfect and scarred, but whole. And that was more than enough. If you've been following Melody and Jaehyun's journey, hit that subscribe button for more emotional romance stories that will make you believe in second chances. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts on their story. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love? Have you ever been given a second chance you didn't think you deserved? Share your experiences below. And if this story touched your heart, show some love by hitting that like button. Remember, love isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to try again. Until next time.